Hello everyone, welcome on the presentation that is part of the College Week Live session for international students. My name is Jakub Tesar. I'm the Education USA advisor in the Fulbright Commission in the Czech Republic, and today I will talk about how to choose a college that is right for you. It's an important topic and it's one of the most important steps when you are thinking about studying in the United States. I'll start with a short presentation and then you will have some space for your questions. So we should, when we think about choosing a college that is best for you, you should really think about it very early. It takes a lot of time, and as I said, it's a very basic step, and a lot of students actually don't realize that United States is very diverse environment. The schools are very diverse. Each school is very different. I can see from my experience that many students see United States as a country that is actually the same everywhere, that each school is the same. So basically what matters is only, for example, financial aid or prestige, these things, but certainly each school is very different. Although each school has its own requirements, its own admission procedures. So basically, if you don't start early, you may have a problem because the procedures can differ from one school to another. So when you can miss deadline in one school and it can be still early at another school. And very importantly, good selection increases your chances and decreases the cost of admission process or even cost of the studies. I hope that at the end of the presentation you'll be able to choose what school is the best for you, but you should also think about some challenges that are connected with that. United States is a very large country with many institutions. There are over 4,000 institutions of higher education. Different types of institutions, either two-year institutions, pre institutions, universities, technological institutes, art institutes. So it's actually very difficult to choose in such a large number the one that is right for you. Also, as I mentioned at the beginning, United States offers a great diversity of schools and environments. So basically, everyone can find place that would be according to his needs or preferences. But the problem is that the students usually don't think about their own criteria. They don't really think about what they're looking for, and it makes it difficult because then you certainly have all 4,000 institutions on the list, and that's unbearable and that's not manageable actually for anyone. For international students, but also for American students, of course, there are many. It's not just about admission, it's also about financial questions, scholarships, costs of study, and these things. And altogether, it actually creates, and it's kind of paradox situation because you can feel that you are kind of swamped, you overwhelmed with information. There are so many institutions, so many information about their requirements, about the environment. But also, if you, for example, look only on the website, you only see great pictures. You only see, everything looks perfect. Everybody's welcome. Every place looks very good, and basically you can think that you don't have enough information. And especially when you're international students and you don't travel to the United States, you can feel that when you're looking at different schools, you still see similar things, and you have no points that would help you to make the decision. American students usually travel to campuses. They have school visits from school admission representatives, so they also have friends or parents that actually can know some of the institutions, and it's something that international students are usually missing. So they should rely on little different resources, and they can have feeling that they are either, as I said, swamped by the information, but also at the same time they don't have enough information to do qualified decision. Uh, Now we should talk about really the main point of the whole process of selecting school, and it is that you should be looking for the best fit. That's really the key thing, that you should be looking for your match. You should be looking for a space that is right for you, and uh, we'll talk about the process how to do it. But as you can see, it's kind of a puzzle. You should really find your fit. What it actually means. What do I mean when I talk about matchmaking? Uh, I actually mean that it's kind of, I always speak about it as it is, as if you would be looking for a partner. Uh, if I would be looking for a girl that I would like to marry, I should be looking for someone whose interests, needs, background are something that actually fits with my interests, needs, and background. And although on a school side there are some requirements that you need to fulfill, and you should really learn in advance if you even eligible to apply to such an institution. So you should basically start with questions. You should really start to ask yourself an important question, because if I'm looking for a match, I should know who am I, uh, because otherwise I cannot find the best match, best fit for me. I should clarify my objectives. I should realize what environment is good for me, what I like, what I dislike, what I actually do not care about, because there may be some criteria that are maybe very important for someone, but doesn't have to be that important for, or important at all for anyone else. Even dislikes and dislikes, maybe like strong likes and strong dislikes, but it may be like, okay, I can still manage, I can still survive at the place, even it's not 100% what I'm looking for. Uh, and as I said at the beginning, the schools have requirements, so you should be able to fulfill these requirements. If the school has, for example, some requirement for language test, there may be some TOEFL score that the school requires, and if you don't fulfill that requirement, basically there's no way how you can apply to that school. Uh, you should also ask yourself what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are you bringing to the campus, because it really works to both sides. So you are looking for the best school for you, but the school is also looking for the best student for you. So it should be really the match. And if you are looking, you have some requirements for the school, you have some needs. You also must understand that the school's got some requirements and want something from you actually. Um, okay, so let's talk about the steps. Let's talk about how to walk on that road to success, how to walk to that road to find the right school for you, because as I mentioned, it increases your chances for admission and even for financial aid. So there are basic steps, and the first step actually, but very important step, is to analyze yourself. Uh, you should know yourself before you start, and uh, the problem is that not many people are actually able to know themselves that well that they able to talk about their strengths, weaknesses, about their likes, dislikes, their needs. So it's very hard. It's a very hard question actually. But if you do the homework well, and you know, okay, I'm looking for some smaller place. I want some environment where I know everyone, or I want an environment where I have many options. There are many people, and I don't have problem of being lost within the group of people. So those are big differences, and each person is different. Uh, you can think about it as, for example, if you would be looking for a place for living. Someone prefers large city, someone prefers a rural area, someone prefers mid-sized city. So it's basically the same if you're looking at schools. Everybody's got different preferences. There's no straight answer for everyone, but you should know what your preferences are. Based on this analysis, you should set up your own criteria. Uh, as I mentioned, for example, the location, the environment, these things. Then you did your homework on your side, and now you must be looking for information. Uh, so you need to gain information, and when you have information, when you have your criteria, you can make selection. You combine this, and basically it's kind of funnel that should give you the results. Okay, so what would be this criteria? What they can actually cover? Because you are applying to college or university level, you applying to higher education, probably one of the most important criteria is academic criteria. We'll talk more deeply about those. Uh, Also, environment is important. You may be living for years in a certain environment, so certainly it contributes to your success, it contributes to your satisfaction. People and atmosphere, the flavor of the school is important. Uh, each of us likes, different groups, different music, different rock groups, these things. So also that's something that you should realize when you're choosing a school. You're looking for a certain atmosphere. You would like to meet certain people. Also, finance is very important, especially in the U.S. Where all schools actually require you to pay tuition fees. And also, a lot of people actually are looking for prestige when they go to study in the United States. Didn't put it on the first place. For some people, it's a first place, first criteria. But prestige is kind of misty and foggy criterion, because who actually sets up the prestige? So now let's talk more deeply about these criteria. So when we talk about the academic criteria, we certainly can talk about fields of study. Uh, does the school offer the field of study that you are looking for? Is it popular at the school? What's the quality of that major at that school? Is it famous maybe for journalism? Is it famous for pre-med? Is it famous for business? What opportunities are offered within the major? Who teaches? What are the professors who teaches the major? What internship opportunities are there? These things are very, very important. Of course, also selectivity. That's something that the students don't realize very much, that some students are really looking at the most selective schools, but they don't have the background for such a selective schools. So you should realize, okay, if I'm an excellent student, I can be looking at a highly selective school. If I'm not such an excellent student, I should not be looking at such selective school. I should be looking for my match regarding selectivity, and basically it also incorporates your GPA, your grade point average. So it means your results from the high school, and also test scores. Those are very important things for the school if they consider admission of the student. Also, even U.S. schools can differ in a way how they organize the study program. Some have more like preset program. Some have very like free program that is very flexible, where you can really actually even create your own major. So it's actually influences the environment, influences your academic results. How rigor is the school? What's the style of teaching? Are there small classes? Are there like large presentations? What is your preference? What I think is actually quite important or quite interesting criteria is the teacher-to-student ratio. It means, how large are the classes. It means how many students actually are for one professor. So it can give you, okay, I'm looking for small environment, or I'm fine with like large environment, maybe more options, but also larger classes. What is my preference? So it was about teaching the academic side of the school, but also, especially in the US, the school is not only about teaching. It may be, for example, because here in the Czech Republic, if you go to school, you spend some time in school, but otherwise, you do anything else outside of school. In the US, if you study at the school, actually the environment is very important because you spend 24 hours, 24/7 at the school, and it's very important what environment is that school providing. One of the most influential parameters is the size of the school. Does the school have 500 students, 5,000 students in the bachelor program, or do they have 30,000 students? It's a huge difference in the environment. Also facilities and equipment. Do you want to do any sport? Does the school has the facility? Do you want to do research in that field? Does the school has the lab for that? Those are things that you should also be looking at. Location is also very important. As I mentioned, if you would be looking at the United States, you should really take a map and look at the map, because you would see that the US is actually a continent, and it's very different to be in Alaska, it's very different to be in New Mexico, it's very different to be in Florida, it's different to be in a small village in Iowa and New York City. So location plays a huge role, and also influences your access to services. For example, how far is the shopping mall, how far is the international airport. Those are things that you should also ask yourself, or ask these institutions. Because you're an international student, you should also be looking at how experienced is the school with international students. Do they offer services? Do they offer support? Do they know what they do if they admit you? So basically, you should also look maybe at numbers of international students, and also ask about services for international students specifically. This category, people and atmosphere, people usually don't think about this category, because again, they think that basically it doesn't matter. But as I noticed, American students, if you look at the papers, you look at the numbers, you look at the selectivity, GPA, scores from the test, you look at the class size and everything, and then if you go to the campus and you just like or dislike the place, it's kind of less rational, but it influences your experience a lot. And so you should also pay attention to those things. And I said, in this thing, it's actually the disadvantage that you cannot visit the campuses, or if you can, your advantage, but most international students cannot. So they must rely on resources like websites and so on, and there you can find what schools actually writes about itself. What do they declare that is their educational philosophy? What is their mission? You can actually find a lot of important information about the people and atmosphere when you read the mission. You should look about the student body. How many international students are there? How many in-state, out-of-state students are there? How many students, from other U.S. states are there? What is the ethnic composition? What is the gender composition? What's the age composition? So those are things that actually influence the environment of the school. Also, as I mentioned, U.S. school is very much not only about studying and teaching, but also about student life, sports and activities. So you should be looking at the selection of activities that you can do. Is there something that actually is appealing to you? Maybe you ride bicycles. You like to ride bicycle. Is there opportunity to ride bicycle? Is there opportunity to play golf, soccer, these things? It may also include the Greek life, so these like U.S. sororities, fraternities that is usually international students are not very much familiar with, but they should, because it may also influence social life at the universities a lot. Another thing that influences or should influence your decision is the philosophy, in general, like broad view of people who are there. In US, you can find very, very different schools. They can be schools that are very conservative. There are schools that are very liberal. There are schools basically like for hippies. There are schools for people who really are very conservative businessmen. So you should really look at the lifestyle worldview at philosophy, because you probably want to be in an environment where you feel good. And also in US, many especially private schools are actually connected with some religion. So it may influence your decision, because you can see different levels how religion is actually implemented in campus life. And last but not least, of course, finance. Uh, Financial questions are very important for most students. You should be looking at tuitions and fees. What's the cost of instruction? You should be looking on living and other costs like costs of books. And there are big, big differences. There are really huge differences. The tuition can be from 5,000 US dollars to 60,000 US dollars. So you can really, there's a really huge selection of that. So you should really know what is your financial situation, what you can afford, and if you cannot afford it, if there is availability of scholarships, what are the requirements of scholarships, what is the value of scholarships, because many schools can say, okay, we have scholarships for international students, but you say, yeah, that's great, but at the end you'll find out that actually, they will offer you just very, very small portion of the cost, and maybe it doesn't help that much. So you should be also looking at the costs, you should be looking at your funding, and you should be looking at the availability of scholarship if your funding is not enough. And I just will touch also the question of prestige, because as I said, a lot of international students, but also American students, actually the first thing what they do is that they look at the rankings, and they try to select schools based on rankings. But the rankings are set on some criteria that may differ from your own criteria, from your own situation. So it's ranking for that ranking is not maybe ranking for you. Of course, probably if you want to study in the United States, you want to have some prestige connected with that, and maybe if you come back and you will thank your grandma, okay, I'm studying in the US, and they will ask about the name of the school. But the problem is, and I can see, for example, even here in the Czech Republic, that public and the parents and friends, they know only very, very few schools. They have very limited knowledge about US education, about US schools. So is it really, you really want to study the school just to please your grandma, that she would be happy that you studied on the school that she actually knows by name? Or you study to get the education, to get into the world, to get the knowledge, to get the connection, you get quality. So that's a huge thing, and I think that I usually recommend students to forget that they actually ever heard about some US schools, they ever heard some names, like brand names, and they should start from the scratch. They should start with whiteboard and see and try to look for school that they like and they are good match with, not just to say I selected the school because of the name. That doesn't really make much sense. But of course, if you want to use rankings, I would take it as kind of a reference. So for example, there are also some reference lists like Peace Guide or Princeton Review, and you don't have to be looking at the first 3 or first 10. You can be looking, okay, if I'm looking at some great US schools, you can be looking at 200 schools, first schools in the rankings, because still, if you look at 200 schools, if you compare it to the total number of schools, it's much it's a really still small percentage, like 10%. So you still have the elite school, even if it's school that you never heard about. but don't take that as a criteria. Uh, Actually, if you're looking at prestige and the name and the quality, so you can also talk to people if you have that opportunity. We tried, for example, create a network of students who already study in the US, and they help the students that are looking at the US schools. Usually, many schools have so-called ambassadors, so you can ask admission office if they can connect you to some of the international students, and you may discuss the school with the current international student there. Also, social media can be very good, especially there are some special servers where actually students are writing about schools. So if you don't know anyone or the school doesn't provide you with the contact, you can still read some references, you can still read some evaluations by students. So you are thinking about some criteria. You should be thinking about your own set of criteria. But then you need the other side, you need the information. So where to look for information? I already mentioned some of those. It would be certainly the school websites. You can also get in touch with the admission offices, ask questions. Also there are these reference lists and reviews like FISGuide, Princeton Review, College Prowler, there are some online resources as well. There are also some search engines. I really like, for example, Big Future by College Board. So if you go to collegeboard.org, you will find college search, and they offer great search engine where you can set up the criteria, and it will give you very nice list, and then you can also look at the profile of the school, and you quickly realize how actually each school is different. So I recommend that one, and it's very detailed, and you can really set up all kinds of criteria that I was actually talking about. And as again I mentioned, social media, I would also include, for example, school newsletters. You can become a fan of the school and see what's going on, what's the life there, and then you can say, okay, can I imagine myself in that environment? Is it something that it's appealing to me? Is it something that I would feel good at? So try to follow the school for a while. Try to get into the school life in advance if you have that time. Also, there are some opportunities like fairs. There are usually fairs from time to time in every country, or school visits. So try to go there, even if you don't see the school that was on your list previously, because you can learn a lot from just meeting the representatives of the school, and it can give you an advantage, because maybe you can find a school there that and the school probably comes to your country because they want students from your country. So if you apply to that school, maybe you increases your chances, because you talk to the rep and you demonstrated your interest in that school, and it certainly influences the admission decision. If you have time and money to travel to the United States, it's actually very good to do campus visits. Like do what Americans do, and they do campus visits. But as I mentioned, most students don't have that opportunity. Don't be afraid to communicate with the school. In different cultures it's different. For example, in Czech Republic it's not very usual to communicate with the school, so I need to recommend our students to write an email, introduce themselves, ask questions directly to the admission office, because the US culture is very customer oriented, and then it includes also the communication with the school. And as I mentioned, if you know someone who's there, try to communicate with current students in the US schools. Okay, so you have information, you have your criteria, and now you should put it together. It's probably the great tool is to create a table where you put your quantitative and qualitative information. So you put, for example, test scores. You will put your the GPA, size of the student body, but also qualitative. So for example, you can say, okay, I like this about that school, I dislike this about that school. So the table is really great because you see each school next to each other, so you can quickly compare. And if you have qualitative, you have some numbers, you can compare it. Even if use, for example, Excel table, so you can quickly organize it. Uh, what I see is that it's very difficult to cut schools. It's hard to make the list smaller. It's much easier to add schools. So probably try to concentrate on cutting first and maybe then adding. It's much simpler. And at the end, you should basically come with your own very own ranking. Uh, so this should be a result of your selection process. So at the end, you should probably come with, there's no certainly, one perfect number of schools, but usually it's from 3, 4 to 10. I see students who apply to 5, 6 schools, but I see some students who apply to 8 schools, 9 schools. If you apply to more than 10 schools, that's very difficult. It's very consuming. It consumes your time and money because you have application fees and everything. So I would rather spend time on good selection and have 5 schools very well selected than schools that actually I will apply to 20 schools, and just like I'll take the first 20 schools in the rankings. That doesn't make any sense really. You don't increase your chances by this. You increase your chances by precious and informed selection. You should always know why the school is on the list. If I would wake you up in the night and I would ask, why do you apply to that school? You should think about, you should give me reasons. And the reason shouldn't be, oh, it's a prestigious school, or it's a well-known school. That would not satisfy me. I would like to have more specific and serious reasons than just like this misty prestige or name or something. You should also diversify your portfolio. Usually, you can think about reach schools, the schools that actually would not be very easy for you to get in, but maybe you don't want to give it up, you want to try. Fitting schools that you would see that, for example, your scores, your GPA, your background is actually a very good fit for that school. And maybe you can think about safe schools, the schools that actually you would be a star for the admission officer. I see in the Czech Republic that some schools actually think about safe schools as local schools, like Czech schools. So they apply to US, they try to find rich schools or fit schools, but it depends how, what is your preference. If the US is number one for everything, so then you can think about all these 3 categories. So probably to have like 2 schools like this, 2 schools like this, 2 schools like this. So I'm going to finish my presentation. I'm already getting some questions, so hopefully I'll be able to answer most of them. And I would like to give you some last advices based on my experience. I think the first experience or first advice is, do not let others choose school for you. Because it's like, do not let rankings choose school for you. Maybe your parents, friends, because you do it for yourself. You don't do it for anyone else. And if they choose your schools badly, then you'll be living there, you'll be studying there, you'll be unsatisfied. You should always be keeping an open mind. That's basically the weight of the likes and dislikes of your preferences. Not try to limit yourself that much that you would be missing some good opportunities. I usually say that it's very good to try to look for unbeaten tracks, to look for like black horses, to look for someone who no one else actually thinks about. Don't try to go with the crowd. Try to avoid the crowd. Try to find your own solutions, because it usually works better and increases again your chances for scholarship and admission. Also try to avoid perfect school syndrome. There's nothing like perfect school. It's like someone who's as I mentioned, someone who's looking for a partner and is looking, okay, I will marry only someone who is perfect for me. Nobody's perfect, and each school gets some advantages and disadvantages. So you should not be disappointed that none of the schools actually will be perfect 100%. There's no way how the schools can be like that. I also see a lot of students got problem with cutting. They said, okay, I read 25 profiles, I really love all of those. If you get to that point, really try to go even deeper, or as I said, listen to your heart, because if your mind, if your reasoning doesn't work, try to listen to your heart. And of course you can say, okay, and I'm still afraid that I cannot actually find a school that is I'm be applying at these 5 schools, but maybe there is one school that is perfect, and I missed it. Actually, it's nothing sure. It may be true, may not, but you can prevent it only when you do a thorough research in advance and you spend a lot of time on research. But only that is really 100% sure. So you're never sure that you don't miss anyone, but it's not reason why. Again, it's like partnership. There's no reason why you cannot marry that girl, because somewhere in the world there maybe can be a girl that that is better, but maybe not. So that's always tricky thing. So as I mentioned, you should, when you do selections, you should follow your mind. You should follow your reasons. You should have criteria and do information, get information. But also, it's about your heart, it's about your feelings, because you are whole, you are human, you are body and soul, so and you'll be living as a human. You're not a robot, you're not a machine that actually just follows the numbers. So even try to apply these things. Do you like the pictures? Do you like the video? Do you like the way how the school communicates? Do you like how people from the school communicate with you? Those are things that are actually in the process. Even you cannot rationalize them very well. So that's actually my last slide, and I will try to take a look at some of the questions. So I'll try to answer some. Okay, the question is, there are too many universities and it's very difficult to read every study plan for the career that I want. What can I do? I'm not really sure if you are thinking about studying on undergraduate level or graduate level. This presentation was more about undergraduate level, and on undergraduate level in the United States you have a lot of flexibility, so you don't even have to think about career afterwards when you apply to school. It's about the potential. So and it may be that you will change your mind during your studies. It's very usual in the United States. So at that way, I would just look at the school in the much broader range of subjects, if they offer that major or that group of subjects, that group of major, and then choose school. At this, you'll be thinking about their career basically afterwards. I don't think that you should think about your career that much now when you apply to college. If you apply to graduate school, that's a little different, master or PhD degrees, and actually I would probably recommend to go to the resources in your field. So for example, okay, I'm working on this topic and I read a book by this professor, and that professor teaches at that school. That's okay, that's a good reference for the school. And then of course you can be reading the curriculum, you can be reading the content of the courses, who teaches there and everything. But especially for undergraduate program, like I don't think that you should really go so much in details now, because undergraduate program is very very broad. Okay. Another question, you mentioned that you would prefer specific reasons that just the prestige of the school. What do you think should be a good reasons? Environment, social life, quality of studies, or what? That was my presentation about. I can try to go back. There were many criteria. So it seems that you probably weren't here for the whole presentation, but the presentation I think should be available afterwards, after the end of today's International Day. So this is the set of criteria. We went to details, but it's academic, it's environment. You basically named those. So you very well realize that those are actually important important criteria. So I can quickly go back. Uh, Academics, environment, people and atmosphere, social life, finance, uh, and prestige also. It may be, especially in some fields, for example, in law or MBA for graduate study, the prestige plays much bigger role. But and you can take it into account, but it should not be based solely only on prestige, because it's very, what is prestige? It's very hard to define what is prestige. Okay, what would be another questions? There are some questions that actually regard studying or application process. I would rather leave it to other presentations, so I will rather answer questions that are related to my topic. Okay, that actually relates to the previous question. It's like, hello, I'm a Chinese student, intend to study in the United States next fall. How much difference do top 10 schools have comparing with top 50 schools? I would say not that much difference. Rankings, you should always look, if you have some ranking, you should always look what is the criteria. Is the criteria for ranking how many parties are there school? Is the criteria for ranking the selectivity? You know, what is the criteria? And is that criteria relevant to you? That's important. And also, schools know very well how they can influence the rankings. I can talk about one example, and I think that it will show you how the rankings are actually, rankings were made by journalists to sell newspapers. You know, it's sometimes hard to compare apples and oranges, and basically that's what rankings do. And do you like apples or you like oranges? You know, any ranking cannot, you know, give you the decision. It can say oranges are actually sweeter, or apples are sweeter, have more vitamin C, you know, these things. But so they can ranking on certainly like data, but basically at the end you like apples more than oranges, even oranges are on the first place, you know, for the ranking. So that's basically what the rankings are about. And also the schools on the top of the rankings, for example, the famous ranking US News is based on one of the criteria is selectivity, and the worse is the smaller is or higher the selectivity is. So for example, it takes less and less persons, so the higher in ranking. And first, the school can influence that. The school can make a marketing campaign, you know, tell people we will admit a lot of students this year, a lot of students will apply, then they will select the same number as last year, and the selectivity will increase, and the school will jump in the ranking without any, you know, change in quality of teaching, for example. Also, the school that is on the first place, they have very high selectivity. Why they have high selectivity? Because they are in the first place. You know, so it actually feeds itself. That's kind of perpetuum mobile. You know, it's actually something that, you know, there's nothing behind it. It's just like complete virtual world. So if I would say top 10 and top 50, no difference. I would say you can choose any school from top 50 and it would be probably, you know, as good as you can. That's actually a good thing, because you should forget if it's the school on the 12th place or 13th spot or 27. You know, you should really think if the school is good for you. But you can look at the first 50, first 100. You will find all great schools there, and within that group, that number, those numbers, you will be looking for schools that is good fit for you in many things. And also another thing is, okay, I'll be looking at just top 10 schools, but can I fulfill their requirements? Is my test score high enough? Are my grades high enough? And so those are also questions that you should ask. So as I said, there are many criteria. You should be really looking for a match. but you can take, certain number of schools from rankings as a whole group. As I said, like you can still look at 200 schools and you should be still looking at great schools. uh, I also, when I look at quality of schools, I look, because I think the quality is done also by what are the other students. So if I'm looking at the school, I would look at the GPA, at the test scores of the students that are admitted. Because if you only look at the selectivity, the selectivity doesn't tell the whole story, because there are some schools where everybody applies, like Harvard. That's why Harvard's got the highest selectivity, because everybody applies even if they are not a good match for Harvard. But there are some schools, like for example women's colleges. There's a much limited number of people, of students, like only girls can study there. And also, not all girls actually prefer environment of women's college. So, for example, the women's college selectivity is, I don't know, 60%. But if you look at the quality of students who are actually admitted, it's as high as at Harvard, or very closely. So if you look at the selectivity and said Harvard admits 5-6%, and I don't know, Mount Holyoke admits 50%, it doesn't mean that Mount Holyoke is 5 times worse, because the quality of the student, the quality of the environment, the quality of teaching and everything is the same. Also, the size of the school can influence things, because if you, for example, as I mentioned, the student-teacher ratio, because the lower the student-teacher ratio is, it's probably better, because also you can look if who teaches you. Are they professors? All your teachers are professors, like full-time professors, or are they teaching assistants? Those are things that influence the quality of the education. What is the class size? So when you look at the rankings, you can take it in account, but you should not take it like, okay, like then, first 10 or, are the best. That's not true. It's like really like comparing apples and oranges, as I mentioned. Everybody's got different preference. Everybody's got different fruit. So there's also a question, if I'm talking about ranking, how to know subject rankings. Actually, there are not very subject rankings for undergraduate studies, because it's what I talked about. The undergraduate study in the US is very flexible. So you can apply that, and you want to, and your intention is to study chemistry. Then you have a great course in economics, and you decide to change your major, and you will actually graduate as a bachelor in economics. So it doesn't make much sense to do subject rankings, but of course there are some recommendations. For example, the FIS guide, the guide that I talked about, they have some like best schools for engineering, best schools in business, best schools in journalism, theater, arts. Also, Princeton Review's got something. US News, I think, got ranking for undergraduate business programs, but most subject rankings relate to graduate programs. So US News got subject rankings for graduate programs because it makes much more sense, because you apply for the certain field. But for undergraduate programs, basically you apply to the school, and you may even apply and be undecided about the field of study that you want to study. Okay. That's also that's something a little different, but it's like I have a poor. There's a question. It's more for graduate study. I have a poor record in my undergraduate, around 65%. But if I get a score around 310 in GRE, can I get into a good college? I wish to pursue Master of Science in Computer Science software. I seriously doubt, because usually it's really based on your previous results and as I mentioned, if you can apply to great schools if you're a great student. If you have average student, you can only apply to average school. That's actually how it works. Of course, it's not only about grades, about test scores. It's also about other things like extracurricular activities, successes, and these things. But usually, the academic criteria comes first. So In the US, you will always find school that will admit you, especially on undergraduate level, maybe a little difficult on the graduate level, because graduate level like master program is something extra. It's not the basic. It's not everyone continues in graduate program, so the graduate schools can be more picky about the candidates. But for undergraduate programs, you will always find school in the US that will admit you. There are schools like IDs, you know, and similar or like broader range of like very selective schools that admit less than 10, 15, 20%. Those are highly or extremely selective. But there are schools that admit 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%, even 100%. So everybody can find a school that will admit him, even a poor student. The question is, however, of course, it's connected with finances, because if you're looking for scholarships, that's where you must offer quality. So if you're a poor student, you cannot really expect that you'll be admitted to great school with great scholarship. There's no way. There's always price for everything, and the price for getting to good school and to getting good scholarship is that you must offer something to school. You must bring the quality to the school. So that's actually how it works. As I mentioned, there are some questions like how do we get into the universities which are best for us. That's a question for the whole presentation. But basically, if you find a good match, good fit, and you're able to explain it to school in your application, in your test scores, in your essay and everything, that you are in your recommendations, that you are a good fit. So I think that your chances are much higher. So it was part of my presentation at the beginning, why actually you should spend so much time on selection. And it's because because you can really increase your chances for everything. And but really the fit. If you're not fitting, then your chances would be low. And that's why it takes a lot of time. And I always recommend to start early. Work hard for a long time, because the US schools take into consideration really a lot of information about students. They take into consideration your whole background from previous education. So for example, your grades from whole high school or your bachelor degree. They take into consideration your activity. So you should be active. You should have a great test scores. You should have a great record of successes. Great recommendations. You should be an active person. Those are things that will get you to better schools. But as I said, you should be always. There's no. So that's why I don't talk about the best schools. I'm talking about the schools that are best for you, because that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for best school. What is the best? Who says that the school is the best? And who says, if someone says that, is it really true for me that the school is the best? Or so I always I talk about the partnerships. I talk about the fruits. I can talk about like cars. Porsche is certainly a great car, but if I have a great family and I need a car with 7 seats, it's probably not the best car for me. So I should be probably looking somewhere else. And as I said again, it's the same is true. Everybody's got different needs. Everybody's got different eligibility. Everybody's got different perspective, and the school is like your partner, and you should be looking for the best partner for you. Okay, some more questions. The finance, we can think about. Let's talk about the finance. Okay, finance is important, and maybe it's a very important criteria. You should be looking at tuition and fees. You should be looking at living and other costs. So altogether the cost of the studies. But also, if you need that, you should be looking at availability of scholarships, the scholarship value. If the scholarships, if you eligible for the scholarship as an international student, and as I mentioned, the Big Future search engine by College Board, you can find plenty of information there. You can actually set up if the school offers scholarship for international students. You can check the point for search, and also if you go to details like the school profile, you can even find the amount that is distributed among international students and number of students who receive that. So you can do very quick calculation, and you can find out what's, for example, the average scholarship at that school. So I really recommend to use Big Future College Board for that. Okay. When I'm talking, the question is, when you say grades, do you mean my grades from my college back home or my GRE and TOEFL results? I mean your grades from your school at home. So, for example, if you're applying from high school, I'm talking about the grades from your high school. Or if you're applying for graduate program, I'm talking about your grades from your undergraduate program. Because US schools really look at your academic background and how you worked academically in longer period. All right, so we getting yeah, there's an interesting question, and it's probably the last question. So the question is LAC versus universities. LAC means liberal arts colleges. I should maybe explain the differences between the schools. In the United States, you have the schools can have different names. They can be colleges, universities, institutes, and sometimes in different cultures and different countries, college can mean something different than in the U.S. College in the U.S. basically means undergraduate program, bachelor program. A university is usually the institution. So the college, if the school is named college, it usually means that it offers only undergraduate program. There may be some differences, like Dartmouth College offers some graduate program. They don't take it like 100%. It's not 100% true in the U.S., but universities technically are institutions that offer not only undergraduate, bachelor programs, but also graduate programs. So that's the biggest difference. But if you apply to undergraduate program, you don't have to care that the school offers actually graduate programs, because when you finish your undergraduate, you will be looking at graduate programs separately from the beginning. And liberal arts college is a special institution that usually is very small. They usually have small number of students, like maybe less than 2,000 students, and they concentrate on liberal arts. It means usually it's social sciences, humanities, natural sciences. They don't usually offer business or engineering, but there are exceptions as well. They don't offer like professional training. They more offer like, I would say, like learning about the world. It means that, for example, more than if you major in something, half of your subjects are from that major, but let's say 50–60% you can choose subjects from different majors, different fields. So you can, for example, you can major in psychology, but you can take computer science as a course, or you can take Italian literature, or you can take astronomy. So that's kind of really you try to learn about the world in the context. It teaches you how to think, how to be flexible, how to learn, how to study, but it's not that like professional preparation. That's why there are not that many like engineering or business courses. So it's usually broader than maybe at universities, but also universities can have liberal arts. For example, if you look at Yale or Princeton or Harvard, their college, their faculty, their school for undergraduate students is actually liberal arts college. So it's very broad. It's very learning about the world. Than like professional training for engineering position, something like that. So it's up to you. What do you prefer? I know that students from Europe, for example, they prefer liberal arts colleges because it's something that they don't have in Europe. Because in Europe and in Czech Republic, you must choose certain field. You cannot really be that flexible like at liberal arts college. So that's actually the last questions. I think our time is out. So thank you for following me. I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you have a productive day today and you learn a lot about studying in the United States. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.